All right, today we are tackling a big one. A topic that's, well, let's just say it's got a reputation. We're going to dive into a pretty wild argument from our source material that tries to build a bridge between ancient Babylon and modern chaos theory. It's a fascinating idea, so let's just jump right in.
For most people, this is pretty much where the conversation starts and ends, right? We think of those little sun sign columns that tell millions of Geminis they're going to have a lucky day. It all feels so generic, so unscientific. But what if that's the wrong conversation? What if we've been arguing about a caricature of the real thing?
So I'm just going to put this number up here, 85%. Let that sink in for a second. What on earth could a number that precise have to do with something as supposedly fuzzy as astrology? Seems way too specific for just vague guesswork, doesn't it?
And here it is. According to the source material we're looking at, that 85% is the claimed level of agreement, the congruence, between a person's deep dive psychological profile and their full detailed astrological chart. Now that is a huge claim. And to even begin to unpack it, we have to forget everything we think we know from the back of the newspaper.
Okay, so let's get into it, because the source is absolutely not talking about the astrology you're probably picturing. We've got to make a crucial distinction between two totally different systems.
So over on the left, you've got pop astrology, or what's technically called tropical astrology. It's based on the seasons of the year, which is why your sign is tied to a certain range of dates. But here's the catch. Due to a wobble in the Earth's axis, it's actually drifted about 24 degrees off from the actual constellations in the sky. It's out of sync. Then you've got sidereal astrology. This system is based on where the stars actually are right now. It uses a mathematical fix to stay lined up with the constellations, and it demands a holistic analysis of the entire solar system at your birth, not just your sun sign. This is the complex system we're talking about today.
And the system didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It has an incredible history. We're talking thousands of years back in Mesopotamia, where it was all about reading omens for kings. Then the ancient Greeks got a hold of it and turned it into this deep philosophical system. It was later saved and built upon by brilliant Islamic scholars. And now it's evolved into this astronomically precise modern practice. The main takeaway here is that it's been refined and updated for centuries.
Okay, so if it's not the simple pop version, how on earth could this sidereal system possibly work? I mean, the source isn't arguing that there's some kind of magical astro rays zapping us from Jupiter. No, instead, it puts forward this really interesting idea, a model pulled from a surprisingly modern corner of science.
And that corner is chaos theory. You probably know it as the butterfly effect, right? The idea that a butterfly flapping its wings in one part of the world could, in theory, kick off a whole chain reaction that leads to a tornado somewhere else. It's all about how tiny little changes at the very beginning of a complex system can lead to huge, seemingly random, yet deeply patterned outcomes down the line.
And this is where the source makes its big leap. It speculates that the sidereal natal chart, that incredibly precise, astronomically correct snapshot of the entire solar system at the exact moment and location of your birth, is like the initial conditions for a deeply complex system. And that system is you.
So let's be super clear here. This is not about cause and effect. It's not about Saturn making you disciplined. It's not about a fixed destiny you can't escape. The idea, as the source puts it, is that the chart works like a map, a kind of fractal map of your built-in patterns, your psychological wiring, and the potentials that are likely to play out over your life. It's a map of possibilities, not a script of your future.
Okay, you might be thinking, but isn't the meaning of it all just made up? The source has a really neat analogy for this. Think about it like color hex codes in design. Mars has a clear symbolic meaning, fiery, assertive action. Let's call it bright red. Saturn symbolizes structure, limits, restraint, a flat gray. Now, when you mix them, you don't get a random color. You get a predictable blend, this kind of muted earthy crimson. You get disciplined energy. The system, it argues, has its own internal logic.
So that's the theory. It's a cool idea for sure. But what about proof?
Well, the source doesn't just leave it a theory. It presents a detailed meta-analysis of two actual people, a son and his mother, and it cross-references three totally different sets of data about them. And look, here are those numbers again. The source's deep dive found an 85% match for the son and an 82% match for the mother between their psychological profiles, their documented life patterns, and their sidereal charts. So let's look at what that actually means with a real example.
For the son, one powerful theme just kept showing up everywhere: rebellious innovation. First, his psychometric tests pegged him as an ENTP personality type, known for being debaters who challenge the status quo. Second, his body of creative work consistently reflects this theme. And third, his astrological chart shows the sun in a square aspect to Uranus, a textbook symbol for an individualistic, disruptive, and innovative spirit. Three different lenses, all pointing to the same pattern.
And it's the same story with his mother. A major theme for her was emotional volatility. Her psych tests showed a very high score in neuroticism. A detailed questionnaire filled out by those who knew her well noted significant, intense shifts in her moods. And our astrology chart? It features the moon, the symbol of our inner emotional world, and the sign of Scorpio, famous for its depth, intensity, and volatility. Once again, the pattern holds across the board.
Now, this is where the source gets really provocative. It kind of flips the whole script on skepticism. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, when people dismiss the entire field based on their brief experience with pop horoscopes, what's really happening is a classic case of the Dunning-Kruger effect. You know, where having just a little bit of knowledge makes you overestimate how much you actually know about a complex topic. That's a challenging thought to sit with.
So where does all this leave us? The source is pretty clear. It's not asking for blind faith. Not at all. Instead, it concludes by saying these claims shouldn't just be accepted or dismissed out of hand. They should be tested, scientifically.
And here's the roadmap it lays out, a full-on research proposal. You take a specific group of people, a cohort, born on the same day, December 30th, 1993, which had a really unique planetary signature. You get their verified birth certificates for exact times to create super precise sidereal charts. Then, you gather all the psychometric and life outcome data you can, and you run the numbers. You look for statistically significant patterns. This isn't mysticism. It's a proposal for empirical science.
And that brings us to the final big question. What if we've been arguing about the wrong thing all this time? What if astrology was never about predicting some rigid, unchangeable destiny? What if, instead, it's a symbolic language, a map of our deepest psychological patterns and our greatest human potential? According to our source, that's a question that's at least worth asking. And that's the thought we'll leave you with today. Thanks for joining.